I'm the Executive Director of the Public Employee Retirement System, Scott Miller. Please just call me Scott. I've been here on May 29th, it will have been 4 years that I've been in this position. I started my career actually in public pensions and benefits back in 1998, if anyone here remembers 1998. I was in the Attorney General's, thank you for laughing, I appreciate it. I'm a recovering lawyer. I was a lawyer at the time. I was in the Attorney General's office for about 8.5 years from 98 to 2006. Representing the Public Employee Retirement System, Teachers Fund for Retirement, State Investment Board. And then I did what I like to say is I took a lap around the country. I went to Montana Public Employees Retirement Administration, was there in House Counsel for a while. Worked in Chicago as a consultant and then as in-house counsel of Chicago Teachers Pension Fund for a while, and then went down to Phoenix. I was the executive or the director of the City of Phoenix Employees Retirement System, COPERS, for about 3.5 years, trying to get trying to expunge my legal past and get the experience I have in this position when Sparb Collins retired. I don't know if any of you remember Sparb, but he is the previous executive director, and I consider him a close personal friend. He's been retired since 2017, but thankfully he won't shut up either, and he keeps contacting me with a lot of information, which is very helpful. Unfortunately, for almost the entire 4 years that I've been here, I've been fighting to keep the defined benefit plan. This is something that the Legislative Assembly, for some unknown reason, has as its kind of pet project is to kill the defined benefit plan and have all new employees go to a defined contribution plan. And so I was asked to come here to talk a little bit about what's happening with what has been called the Retirement Committee. It's an interim committee that was created for the sole purpose of figuring out how to close the defined benefit plan and submitting a plan to the next Legislative Assembly to do so. No worries. And so that's what's been going on, and it's been a lot of fun, let me tell you. So the agenda that we're going to talk about is defined benefit plan and defined contribution plans. What are they? So that you can all have a little better understanding of the other things that I'll be talking about during the course of this discussion. The impact of closing the main defined benefit plan, and in short, it's a bad thing. It's very, very expensive. And then legislative efforts to close the main defined benefit plan, including what's going on right now. So what's a defined benefit plan? Well, it's just what it says it is, and I'm sure many of you, we have about 130 school districts in our plan, the main PERS plan. You are actually the biggest cohort in the plan. We only have 96 state agencies and about 130 you folks. And so you're very important to us. Defined benefit plan is just a plan that provides a benefit that is defined by statute. And you can see the formula here. It's years of service times final average salary times a multiplier. For people before January 1 of 2020, that multiplier is 2%. For people after that, it's 1.75%. So as we'll talk about, those folks have already, the new employees are already getting entitled to a retirement benefit about 12.5% below what the rest of us are. Now this is a guaranteed lifetime benefit for the member and possibly their spouse. As many of you probably know, you can take a joint survivor annuity. This formula gets you to the single life annuity. And so if I just take this benefit, that tells me exactly what that benefit is going to be. However, if I want my wife to get a benefit after I pass away, because I'm a man and I also happen to be very accident prone, I'm going to die 5 or 6 years before she will. And so to make sure that she gets something, I can take a joint survivor benefit, which is either 50% joint survivor, which means she gets half of what I get, or 100% joint survivor, which is what I'm sure she's going to hope that I pick, and she'll get the entire thing when I leave. That's an actuarial reduction, and so we have these actuarial factors that get built into this. And so say my initial benefit would have been $1,000, my 100% joint survivor might be $900. My 50% joint survivor might be $950. It's just an actuarial calculation. We're not trying to make money off of it, and we're not trying to give you extra money out of it. It's supposed to be equal no matter what the benefit is. The average main PERS DB hybrid plan benefit, the main plan is kind of a hybrid because we also have some aspects of a defined contribution plan in it, and we can talk about that if you want to, but it's not really relevant to this discussion. But the average benefit is $16,116 a month. Anybody getting rich off of that? Nobody's getting rich off of that. It's $2,000 above the poverty line, which is a good thing. That combined with Social Security, and hopefully folks have some ancillary savings, like in a deferred comp. We have a deferred comp plan that some of you are in. That helps provide a stable benefit for their lifetime. Interestingly, every dollar that the taxpayer contributes to the plan, so every dollar that the employer contributes on our behalf or that we contribute, every dollar creates $7 in economic benefit. You can't get that return anywhere else. But why is there a $7 return for every $1 invested by the taxpayer? Because most of the arguments about closing a DB plan is it's costing the taxpayer too much. And this is an argument directly in opposition to that. Every dollar the taxpayer pays in gets $7 in economic benefits in the state. And the reasons for that are several. First, every dollar that comes in gets invested. And when that gets invested, we get quite a bit of returns. We have an assumed rate of return of 7%. Last fiscal year, we made 27%, which was ridiculous. I don't think we'd ever hit that before. But we assume that we're gonna have 7% return on our investments. Every dollar that we pay out, about 75% of every one of those dollars is investment income. Only about 25% is the contributions made by the employee or the employer. And so you can see right there that multiplication factor from just the investment program itself is like 3 or 4 times. But then when we pay those benefits out to retirees, what do they do with those benefit payments? Do they just bank them, put them in under their mattress? No, they spend them. They buy a car, they go to the grocery store, they help their kids out, they buy their grandkids clothes. And what happens with that dollar? Well, they go to the grocery store, they pay that dollar to the grocer. What does the grocer do? Well, he doesn't bank it either. He pays it to his employees. He buys supplies with it. The employees take the money that they get paid and they buy other things. That's where the big part of that comes from. Every dollar that we pay to a retiree results in $3 in economic benefits to the community. So that's how you get up to that 7 times a multiplier from every dollar that the taxpayer contributes to this plan, $7 in return for the community. Now you're going to see a few things here that are going to have that yellow highlighting right there. Hopefully it's not bled out too badly that you can't see it. But the yellow highlighting is quotes or citations from an actuary named Milliman. Milliman is a very large nationwide actuarial firm. They represent hundreds, literally hundreds, of public retirement systems. They're also the actuary that the retirement committee, the interim retirement committee, hired as their expert to give them expert advice as they try to figure out how to close the defined benefit plan and have all new employees go to a defined contribution plan. And their expert gave a presentation on April 11, 2022 to the interim legislative retirement committee that I will be citing for the next 10 years of my career. Seriously. And this is one of my favorite. A defined benefit plan from their own expert is an efficient use of taxpayer money. Remember this, because there's going to be the other side of that coin when we talk about the defined contribution plan. Another common belief that people have in regard to defined benefit plans is that the employer has all of the risk. I hear that all the time. The taxpayer has all the risk. The employer has all the risk in the defined benefit plan. We have to get rid of it. We have to go to a defined contribution plan and get rid of that risk. Legally, that's accurate. Legally, the employer, the state, you folks as employers, yes, under the law, you have that responsibility. But practically, it's anything but that. As a matter of fact, since the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009, employees have done more, have shouldered more of the burden to get our defined benefit plan back to the course of full funding than the employers have, than the taxpayers have. If you recall, we submitted a bill back in 2011. It was called the Shared Recovery Plan. The plan was We asked the Legislative Assembly for 4 1% increases for both the employee and the employer over the course of 4 years. They only gave us 3. Well, they only gave us 2, and then we had to go back to the next legislative session and ask for the other 2, and they only gave us 1. So the employees voluntarily said, we'll pay 4 more % just to make sure that our DB plan is stable. They only took 3%, and the employers took 3%. We could not get them, and we have not been able to yet, get that extra 1%. We would have loved that extra 1%. We're actually behind by a couple $100 million because we haven't gotten that 1%. We asked the 2013 Legislative Assembly, the 15 Legislative Assembly, the 17 Legislative Assembly. You see a pattern here? They haven't done it. And so in 2019, we still needed to do something to get us back on the path to full funding. And so we had employee benefit reductions. We extended the retirement for new employees. It's no longer the rule of 85, it's the rule of 90 for new employees. We took away the retiree health insurance credit, and that contribution that the employer makes now goes into the main retirement plan. And we reduced that benefit multiplier, like I told you before, down to 1.75%. So yes, legally the employer is on the hook, but practically, no. Practically, you and I have been doing the things that we needed to do to make sure that our defined benefit plan remains stable. The taxpayer has not. They've not kept up. We're 1.95% more on the hook right now than the employers have been. We're the ones taking care of this. And they kind of forget that from time to time. What's the status of our defined benefit plan right now? Well, I'm happy to tell you, based on all these changes, the increases in the contributions, reductions in the benefits, we are on the path to getting to, as of last July 1 of 2021, we are on the path to getting 100% funded by about 2060. That's still a ways away. I don't know if I'll be here by then, but hopefully I'll live to see that, and I'm really excited about that. They don't like to see this either. The Legislative Assembly doesn't like to see this because they think that we're heading into the toilet. But we, all of us, have done the things that are necessary to try to get this back on the path to full funding. So what's a defined contribution plan? You can see some yellow down here. I should have had it pop up so I don't ruin any of the fun things that Milliman said. But defined contribution plan, the only parameter that is defined in a defined contribution plan is the contribution. You have no idea what your retirement benefit is going to be at the end of your career in a defined contribution plan. The employer contributes money, the employee contributes money, the employer kind of goes, I'm done, good luck, have a great time. And that's a hard thing for folks to do, because you and I mean, I've been in this business, like I said, for several decades now. I don't want to invest my own money. I'm not good at it. Why am I not good at it? Because I'm a human being. When the Dow drops by 3%, I want to take my money the heck out of that. And that's the exact wrong thing to do. Human beings sell at the bottom and buy at the top. It's been shown over and over and over again. That's why you and I, if we're investing by ourselves, we usually get about a 1% lower return than the employer does. And why is that? Because the employer has, we have the State Investment Board. They're doing an awesome job for us. They don't get itchy trigger fingers when the Dow goes up or down. They don't get itchy trigger fingers when the Fed decides to jack up rates by 0.5 point like they did yesterday. They stay the course. That's what's important with an investment program. And that shows you kind of the problem with the defined contribution plan is, in fact, all of the risk is on the employee. The employer doesn't have any of the risk. They contribute their 7 or whatever % that they contribute to the defined contribution plan, and they turn around and walk away and say, you know, good luck. We hope you get enough money to actually retire at some point. That risk includes the investment risk, which we just talked about. Employees typically earn a lower return than DB plans do and typically pay all of the expenses. That's from their own expert, Milliman. Longevity risk. Who knows how long they're going to live? I don't know how long I'm going to live. I'm 54. I'm accident prone. Does that take a couple years away? My mom died at 57. I hope I beat her. But I have no idea how long I'm going to live. I have no idea how long my wife's going to live. No idea. That longevity risk, individually in a defined contribution plan, I would have to try to invest enough money so that I'm going to have money if I live to 100. My great-grandmother lived to 99. I think I got a shot, you know? I don't know. I mean, my mom didn't give me great genes, but hopefully my grandma did, you know? But I don't know what that is. It's harder for public safety employees with shorter working lifetimes to build up sufficient retirement accounts, again from Milliman. And that doesn't really apply. Well, I guess teachers should probably have hazard pay and are probably in a rougher job than my brother-in-law who's a cop, but nonetheless. And it's difficult to provide meaningful disability, pre-retirement death, or subsidized early retirement benefits in the defined contribution plan. We have a defined contribution plan. It was implemented in 2001. I was actually the attorney that helped implement the stupid thing. It's not a stupid thing. It's a good plan for what it is, I should say. But we could not figure out how to add a disability benefit to it. There's just no way. And so the disability benefit for people who chose the DC plan is the account balance. I mean, it's just the same as if you took a retirement. There's nothing else that we can do for you because you can't build that into a DC plan. You have to buy insurance someplace else rather than self-insure, which is what we do in the defined benefit plan. Now, this is my favorite quote of their entire presentation. Defined contribution plan is an inefficient use of taxpayer money. I'll remind you of my other favorite quote. The defined benefit plan is an efficient use of taxpayer money. And that's because every $1 that taxpayers put in, they get $7 in return. That's not the same for defined contribution plans. In the next line, studies show that DC plans, defined contribution plans, are about twice as expensive as DB plans for the same benefit. Or put another way, DC plans can only provide half the benefit of a DB plan for the same cost. That's because, again, DB plans have the following benefits: longevity risk pooling. I may live to 110, somebody else may live to 50. That evens out. If I'm the only one that cares about and I'm taking care of me as far as longevity goes, I have to have a lot more money to make sure that I still have money when I die. Higher investment returns, we talked about that. Lower fees. State Investment Board gets much better fees than I get in the deferred compensation plan. I'm investing in mutual funds. I'm paying 1% or 1.5% for something the State Investment Board can get for 25 basis points or 0.25%. And optimally balanced investment portfolios, we talked about a little bit. So I started thinking, what would a DC plan have to have? What would a DC plan participant have to have as far as a pool of money to get that same $16,116 benefit that you can get in the defined benefit plan? You would need over $400,000 in your account, assuming a 4% withdrawal rate. And that 4% withdrawal rate has been around for about 15, 20, 25 years. Some economist or financial person out there said, you know, if you've got a pot of money, you can reasonably take 4% out of that pot of money every year and maintain it for your lifetime. Well, lately with the lower interest rates, higher inflation, a lot of folks think that that number is really 3.4%. If you only take out 3.4% of your account, you can reasonably expect it to last for your lifetime. You need a $474,000 account to take out 3.4%. That would get you $16,100. That's a huge amount of money. And then I thought, what would it take? You know, how much am I going to have to? How much is somebody going to have to? Because I'm in the DB plan. Trust me. How much would somebody in the DC plan have to save every year in order to get up to that pot of money? It's extraordinary. At 14.12%, which is the current contribution rate, and I'm not talking about the extra for their RHIC, you'd only get a balance of $177,000 after our typical work life span. Our typical retiree gets $16,000, has a final average salary of $40,000, and has been here for just under 21 years. So I plugged all that into an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm horrible at Excel, so I made sure my chief financial officer took care of it for me. I get an account balance at 6% return, 1% less than we're expecting from the defined benefit plan, because that's what studies show individuals get is 1% less. So 6% compounded yearly. I am not bright enough to compound that monthly. You get $177,000 balance. 4% withdrawal, that's $7,000 a year. That's half of the poverty line. 3.4%, $6,000, which of course is worse. You need 32% contribution rate to get up to that $400,000 level, 38% contribution rate to get up to that $474,000 level. I can't pay that. I can't pay that as an employer, and I can't pay that as an employee. That's too much money. Like I said, I came here from the city of Phoenix. When I was in the city of Phoenix, at one point, my employee contribution was 15.5%. And then the 6.25% for FICA. And so over 21% of my, almost 22% of my salary was going into retirement. We couldn't get people in the city, we could not get people to apply for jobs with the city of Phoenix. If they applied and we told them what the contribution rate was, they wouldn't come to the interview. If they came to the interview and saw what the contribution rate was, they walked out of the interview. If they didn't look at any of it and started the job and got their first paycheck and went, where in the heck is my money? They walked off the job. Right now, the city of Phoenix, the only people the city of Phoenix can get to work for them right now are people that you and I don't want to work with. I'm serious. I mean, you're talking, I mean, seriously, they're people that you would not want to work with, that you would not want working for you. Like I said, I was the director. They're having a ridiculous time trying to get people to come in. They finally capped that at 11%. And I'm here to tell you, 11% is too high. They're still having that same situation. They can't hire people. We're already at 7. How are you going to get up to this level? Even the newer folks with that 12.5% reduced benefit, with those same assumptions, are going to need a 28% to 33% contribution rate. Without an increase in contributions to get up to that point, costing both our employees and our employers, our taxpayers, more money, future employees would experience about a cut of about 50% of that benefit. What's going to happen with those folks? Well, they're going to run out of money, and they're going to end up on the welfare rolls. And I'm here to tell you the defined benefit plan is a much more efficient way to take care of those people than having them on welfare. So what happens when you close a DB plan? So we know what a DB plan is, we know what a DC plan is, we know what the kind of the pros and cons of the two of them are. What happens when you close a defined benefit plan? Well, the unfunded liabilities skyrocket. Right now we're about $1.4 billion. That's a lot of money. I agree with every legislator who says $1.4 billion is a lot of money. We're $1.4 billion underfunded. But what happens when you close a defined benefit plan is you cut off the future payments from new employees. And if you look at that, the normal cost is 11.33%. Normal cost is what it costs to buy my benefit today. For every day that I work, it's 11.33% of my pay. That's what it costs for this defined benefit plan that I'm accruing this one extra day for today. But total contributions right now average 14.16%, which is higher. So we're getting in more money than we need to pay for the benefit that I'm accruing today, and that money is what we use to pay down the unfunded liabilities. And what happens when that money goes away? We can't pay down the unfunded liabilities. I mean, you all are business managers, you probably know this better than I. You can't pay down the liability if you don't pay down the liability. De-risking the investment portfolio. When we close the fund, right now our investments again are projected to get us a 7% return. Like I said, the trick is getting me to shut up, and so I want to make sure I'm still in my time frame. Right now we assume a 7% return. In order to get that 7% return, we have an incredibly well-diversified portfolio of assets that the State Investment Board has attained for us. About 70% equities, 30% fixed income or bonds. We have some private equity, we have some timber of all things. We have a little more, we can afford to take the risk of a 70-30 portfolio because right now at least, we're investing for the long term. We're in fact investing for the infinite term. And so we can take those risks because if something goes wrong, we still have the time, infinite, to make that up if we have to. But if you close that defined benefit plan, that takes away that infinity mark and gives us about a 30-year mark. And so we have to be much more careful about how we're investing those monies if we only have 30 years to invest them. That's going to make us the same as somebody in the defined contribution plan. Early in your career as a DC person, my youngest daughter is in a 401k, unfortunately. She's investing very aggressively because she's 23 and she has 40 years in order to make that money up if she loses it like she did today. But as she gets closer to retirement, she needs to take that risk down. My dad taught at the University of North Dakota for 43 years. He was going to retire at 40 years, and guess what happened? The global financial crisis. He couldn't retire. He didn't have the money anymore. And so he had to work a few extra years and watch that market come back up again. That's what's going to happen if they close the defined benefit plan. We're going to have to de-risk our investment portfolio over the course of time. What happens when you de-risk that? Well, we can't assume a 7% return anymore. It'll go down to 6%, and then it'll go down to 5%, and then it'll go down to 4%. Right now, our job service plan is a closed plan. It's been closed for about 20 or 25 years. The assumed rate of return for that is 3.75%. That assumed rate of return, and I'm going to test your math right now, that assumed rate of return is what we use to discount our future liabilities. What that means is to figure out what that unfunded what the actual liability is right now, so that you can determine what unfunded liability is. Our actuary projects a benefit stream for every single person that's in our plan. For me, for you if you're in the plan, for everybody that works for me, they look at, well, we have an assumption for when Scott's going to retire. We have an assumption for what Scott's going to be making when he retires. We have an assumption for how long Scott's going to live, and I'd love to know what that assumption is. And we build that up. And so say we have, Scott's going to be getting $1,000 a month for the rest of his life. Do we need, and say I'm going to live for 5 years, do we need $60,000, 60 payments, $60,000 in order to pay that? No. We need an amount of money that when invested, that amount of money plus the investment returns will pay off that $60,000 over that 5 years. And so we discount back to the present value using that 7% assumed rate of return. And so we might need $40,000 instead of that $60,000. That's what the actual liability is for Scott. Well, what happens when you reduce that discount rate, when you reduce your assumed rate of return going forward? Well, you need a lot more money in the pot now, because now we're only expecting to get 6% later, or 5% later, or 4% later. That keeps going up and up. Well, when those liabilities go up, unfortunately our assets don't go up too. We have $4.1 billion in assets, but that doesn't go up because our liabilities do. That still stays at $4.1 billion. Right now we're $1.4 billion short. Well, you close the plan, we're going to go up to about 2.8, 3 billion, 3.2 billion, because those liabilities get so much bigger because we're not expecting to get that same amount of return over the course of time. People don't understand that. I've been saying this for 4 years. People don't understand that. People in a certain building up on the Capitol complex don't understand it. And so I've been trying to make sure that they do. The GASB liabilities also skyrocket, and I'm betting most of you know what I'm talking about with that all too well. The Governmental Accounting Standards Board requires all of you, all of the participants in the retirement plan, to report on your financial statements your share of the unfunded liability. And if you're the person that is in charge of that, you realize that it's been up and down and up and down. And that's because our funding status has been going up and down and up and down. If we'd have gotten that 1% increase, all of our lives would have been a lot easier. But those GASB liabilities are going to skyrocket too, because our unfunded liability is going to skyrocket. We're going to end up using that single discount rate, which is about 4.5%, to discount our liabilities. Your GASB liabilities are going to be going up, and good luck bonding in the future. I've already had to work with a city that wanted to bond, and S&P was coming in to rate their bonds, And they got me on the phone to tell them what in the world was going on, because that's a bad, bad thing. You're going to be in the red. Most of you have probably been in the red for 2 of the past 3 or 4 years because the GASB liabilities were so high. How do you take care of that unfunded liability? Well, contributions are going to have to increase probably up to that 30% level that we were looking at earlier. Because basically when you close a DB plan, you end up having to fund it like a DC plan. That literally just occurred to me. I'm going to have to look at that, but I think that's true. How much more are you guys going to be willing to pay? How much more can you pay? I mean, I think that's probably the bigger question. So now here we are. The retirement committee is again looking at how to close it. This is not the first time. They've tried to do it every single legislative session since the global financial crisis. 2014, there was an interim study to close the main PERS DB hybrid plan. Excuse me. The Legislative Assembly's actuary, a different one from Milliman, but their expert calculated it would cost about $445 million in a cash infusion in order to close it. But for some reason, they did not take into account de-risking the investment portfolio, and I don't have any idea why. When our actuary ran that same thing, they didn't either, and I don't know why they didn't either. I wasn't here, I was having fun somewhere else in the country at that time. In the 2017-2019 interim, there was a proposal to close the DB plan, have all the employees go to a DC plan, and deposit $108 million additional into the fund every year. That's a lot of money. That'll do it. Nope, not even close. The actual analysis, which did take into account de-risking the investment portfolio, showed that we would be insolvent. We wouldn't have any money to pay benefits by possibly even 2040, 18 years from now. How do we pay that going forward? The state has made a commitment to paying this. How do we pay that? That's what people say now when they talk about closing the defined benefit plan. It's going to be expensive, but we made a commitment to pay these benefits. Well, how? When we don't have any money. We're going to have to go to Legislative Assembly every session and ask for $600 million, $700 million in order to pay these off. I don't know how they're going to come up with it either. In 2021 session, they actually hog-housed one of our bills. Our bill that asked for that extra 1% and 1% increase. They ripped everything out. They put in a bill to close the DB plan, initially for all participating employers, and then they amended it to split out the state and political subs. I don't know how you feel about running your own retirement plan, but there we are. They intentionally did not submit it to the Employee Benefits Programs Committee. The Employee Benefits Programs Committee is a standing committee of the Legislative Assembly whose sole purpose is to take a look at bills that affect any of the plans that we administer in any way. And they actually wrote the amendment to get it out of the jurisdiction of the Employee Benefits Programs Committee. So we were not able to tell them how much that was going to cost. And that's actually what killed the bill. At 9:45 at night, 9:45 in the evening, the last day of the session, that bill finally died. And if you heard a scream coming from the Bismarck area, that was me. I was ecstatic that they did that because the Senate, rightfully so, said, we have no idea how much this is going to cost. How in the world can we pass this? Well, it only failed by about 14 or 15 votes. Hopefully the retirement committee, they should be getting the numbers about how much it's going to cost, which is supposed to include de-risking the investment portfolio over the course of the next couple of meetings. I encourage you to go on to the retirement committee's website, look at the agendas. You can watch the proceedings online. If there's one thing that came out of the pandemic, it's the ability to do just about anything from where you're at. I've been able to give testimony at the last legislative session via Teams. I actually had a very bad case of COVID and ended up having to do some stuff online. You can watch all this online. You can go back and look at all the previous retirement committee meetings, and you'll see me talking about kind of the same thing in the very first one. So it's very interesting. I encourage you to do that. So that died in 2021, but they created a study bill which says the retirement committee shall develop a plan for new hires under the Public Employees Retirement System main system, the DB, to participate in the defined contribution plan and to close the defined benefit plan to new entries effective January 1, 2024. They hired the actuary, Milliman, like I just mentioned. They are looking at other retirement plan options other than just the DC. And there are several. There's a cash balance plan. The PERS plan actually used to be a cash balance plan way back in the early 70s. Then they closed it and went to a defined contribution plan. And then they realized the defined contribution plan isn't providing a good enough retirement and created the defined benefit plan in 1977. So we've already done this. I've been trying to tell them, you already made the mistake of closing a defined benefit plan, going to a defined contribution plan, and starting a new defined benefit plan. Why would you do this again? But here we are. They're looking at cash balance plans again. They're looking at hybrid plans. Hybrid plans are a combination of both defined contribution and defined benefit plans, where some of your compensation is put into a defined benefit plan, some of it's put into a defined contribution plan. The structure of that varies. I actually implemented one down in the city of Phoenix, so it'll be interesting to see what the committee decides to look into. And then the variable plan, which I've never seen before. I don't know if anybody has that. But the variable plan, none of these optional plans give anyone any idea what they're going to be retiring on. Not like the defined benefit plan. The defined benefit plan, well, heck, you can go on our member services and do a benefit estimate, and that'll give you a reasonably good idea of what you're going to be retiring on under a defined benefit plan. That's just not possible with any of these other plans. Matter of fact, that variable retirement plan, once you take a retirement, your retirement benefit could actually go down or up, depending on the stock market, because that's the design of the variable plan. That's why it's called a variable plan, is because it can go up and down with the market. And of course, optional plans are very difficult for non-experts to understand. I'm an expert, or at least I claim to be, and I couldn't tell you exactly what that variable plan is. I've never seen one before. It's new to me. And then of course, all of those options transfer all the risk to us, to the employee. What is that going to do if that happens? What's going to happen with recruitment? Well, 74% of millennial state and local employees say a pension benefit is a major reason they chose a public sector job. That's out of this National Institute on Retirement Security study from 2019. It's on their webpage if you would like it. I can certainly send it to you because I have it right up on my desktop. It's a very interesting survey. We keep hearing, people keep saying millennials don't want a defined benefit plan. They want a 401k. They want to go work here, and then they want a job hop here, and then they want a job hop here. Well, I don't know how many of you are 54 like me. I'm a Gen X. What did I do when I got out of undergrad? I took a job, the first job I could take, because I love pizza and want to be able to feed myself. I love beer more, but we won't talk about that. And then there was something else that popped up, and I went, I'm going to make a little bit more money there, and hey, I might even get benefits there. So I went over to that one. And then I got a little more experience, and I qualified for this one over here, so I jumped over to this one. And then I went to law school for 3 years and ruined my life. But anyway, but that's what we did too, right? I mean, that's what they're doing. What do you do when you want to have kids and you want to have a career? You pick the place with the best benefits for the amount of pay that you can get. That's us. Folks that can offer a defined benefit plan, that's the gold standard for retirement plans. So what is closing that going to do for recruitment? It's not going to help. What's it going to do for retention? 93% of state and local employees say pensions incentivize public workers to have long public service careers. My rule of 85 is in 2.5 years. Do you think I'm leaving in the next 2.5 years? No. They're called golden handcuffs for a reason. And then if I stay for 2 more years, my benefit goes up another 5%. Awesome. It incentivizes people to stay. DC plans don't. More than half of state and local employees say switching out of a pension would make them more likely to leave their job. I'm 2.5 years away from retirement. You cut my benefit, I'm gone. I'm here to tell you, I'm having a hard time not applying to the executive director position that's open right now in the Virgin Islands. After this winter, after this April, for the love, I mean, get me out of here. I mean, you don't have to shovel sunshine, right? This is where we talk about, I'm sorry, I guess the trick is getting me to shut up. All right, I've got a couple more minutes. This is what the financial impact is to the state of North Dakota. Those of you who don't know, this is the state of North Dakota. And each of those are counties within the state of North Dakota. We pay a lot of money to every county in the state of North Dakota. We pay about $200 million in benefits to retirees within the state of North Dakota. $200 million. We have to be one of the biggest payrolls in the entire state. Can you imagine if I had a company and I'm looking for some place to base that company, and I come to the state of North Dakota and I tell the governor and the legislature that I'm interested in bringing my company here, and I guarantee I will have a $200 million payroll for people in the state. Can you imagine the tax incentives that I would get to bring my company here? I'm right here. The defined benefit plan is right here. Every one of those $200 million that goes into the economy of these communities generates $3 in return for those communities. And what did we say happens when you close the DB plan and go to the DC plan? For the same amount of money, half the benefits. They're going to cut this down to $100 million. Can you afford to lose $100 million in the state's economy? $300 million in economic impact? People aren't thinking about that. So that's going on in the Retirement Committee. The Employee Benefits Programs Committee just saw and took jurisdiction over a number of bills on Tuesday. And you can go back and look at that online as well. I encourage you to keep watching the Employee Benefits Programs Committee meetings as well, because a lot of things are coming up. There are 2 bills in front of the Employee Benefits Programs Committee that we're watching. We'll put it that way. One is draft bill number 34, relating to the powers and duties of the Employee Benefits Programs Committee. Right now, every bill that has an impact on any of the plans that we administer, actuarially or otherwise, and that's actually right out of the statute, has to go through the Employee Benefits Programs Committee. They have to get an actuarial analysis of that bill so that everyone knows what that's going to cost. This bill would take that out. If a bill is passed without going through employee benefits, it's void. This bill would take that out. And so that takes out some of the protections that we would have with having the Employee Benefits Programs Committee taking a look at this and doing that cost analysis to see what it's going to cost. Draft Bill 45, relating to retirement board membership and public employees retirement system contracts for health benefits coverage. I'm sure many of you probably have our health plan as well. This would remove 2 of our board members, the state health officer, which blows my mind since we're the health insurance plan for the state, and one of our active employees, and add on 4 legislators. So there would be 6 out of the 11 board members would be legislators. It'd be a legislative body at that point, of course. Which, those of you who aren't recovering lawyers, there's this thing called the Separation of Powers Clause in the Constitution, which says, legislature, you do legislative things. Once you've made a law, the executive branch takes care of the laws. This would be, and then it also prohibits the board from signing a new or renewal contract for health insurance unless the action has been authorized by the legislature through the passage of a bill to do so, which again, from a separation of powers perspective is well, we'll be watching that. We'll put it that way. So that's about it. It's kind of grim. I apologize for being a little bit grim. My nickname right before I left the AG's office was the Grim Reaper, frankly, which is, well, it was deserved, I have to tell you. But what can you do? Get involved. Really, last session when 2046 got hog-housed to close the defined benefit plan, me and the Association of Counties, League of Cities, in North Dakota United, the four of us were really the only people talking to the Legislative Assembly, because it happened really quickly, right? I mean, if you were watching, it happened 2 weeks before, well, it happened about a week before we thought the Legislative Assembly was going to end. This bill kind of single-handedly extended the session by another week, so it was 2 weeks before the actual close. And so things happened quickly. I encourage you to watch. I encourage you to get involved. I encourage you to talk to your legislators, and I encourage you to do so locally. I'd be more than happy if you came to Bismarck during the session or during the committee meetings, presented testimony, either written or in person or online. You can do that online as well too. If you're in town and you have any questions, give me a call. I have all my stuff on the last slide here. But it's so much more effective when you can grab Representative Joe on Main Street and ask him what in the heck he's thinking. What are you doing trying to take this money out of our community? Every dollar that we pay is $3 into my community. It's 7 times the economic impact. Every dollar we pay is $3 in my community. They need to hear that. They need to hear that you're concerned, that if you are concerned, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you are concerned, if you're concerned about recruitment, being able to recruit without a DB plan, looking just like every other private entity out there with a DC plan, if you're concerned about retention, making sure that people stay with your job, it is so expensive to train new people. I mean, it's so much easier, it's so much cheaper to keep the people, especially if they're good people. And DC plans just don't do that. DC plans encourage people to go away, go do other things. I mean, I did a lot of things, let's be honest. I mean, I did a lot around the country for crying out loud. But I came back to this defined benefit plan. So please get involved. There's my contact information. It's probably the easiest email in the entire state, scottmiller@nd.gov. That's my direct line. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please give me a call. I literally love talking to members. I love talking to administrators. I will admit, there have been 1 or 2 members who've been really, really angry at me, and I haven't enjoyed them. But most of you, I'm sure, are quite nice. So please reach out if you have any questions, and I'd love to take any questions right now. Oh, come on, I was told you guys were going to have dozens of questions. No? Okay, yes.
You know what, if you want people to testify in any of these interns, get a hold of our ladies over there. They can put it out on the listserv, and you'll have people
Excellent.
that will come, that will testify, that will give you written testimony. I mean, there's a couple of us sitting right here that would be real happy to do that anytime.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah.
Are you going to be presenting some of the same information to our legislators before the session? I'm having to sit down with my 3 local legislatures before the session. I always do the highlight our concerns.
Mm-hmm.
Can I take excerpts from this to share with
Oh,
them?
please do. Yeah, please do. I shared a lot of this information. Of course, we did not have the wonderful quotes from their own actuary at the time, but that's the Milliman cited the same survey that I cited as far as DC plans providing half the benefit for the same cost. And I told this committee that. I told the Employee Benefits Committee that. I mean, like I said, the trick is getting me to shut up, and I get kind of loud sometimes, as you might imagine. I've let them know. I continue to let them know. I'm really excited for Milliman to get to that point. They've been having kind of short 1.5-hour meetings every other week. They've been tasked with providing information to the committee about what it's going to cost to have a DC plan with a commensurate benefit. And to me, that's those things that I showed, those tables that I showed with the $400,000 and $500,000 account balances that they're going to need in order to get a reasonable retirement. I'm really looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to seeing Milliman's estimate of what it's going to cost to close the defined benefit plan, because again, all the studies that I've ever seen it's way too expensive. I mean, billions of dollars, way too expensive. And so yes, I will. I'm reasonably certain Milliman will. And of course, next session we'll be doing this for real. So, any other questions? All right. Well, thanks so much. You had a great day here. Nice view, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care, everybody.